It always starts quietly. Not with headlines, not with sirens, not with something that feels world-changing. It starts in a place that looks ordinary, even beautiful. Palm Beach, Florida. The kind of place people dream about. Endless sun, ocean breeze, palm trees swaying like they have nowhere to be. Streets so clean they almost feel artificial. And houses, not just houses, but estates. Mansions worth millions sitting behind gates, hidden from view, many of them empty most of the year. Owned by people who only show up when it suits them. Third homes. Fourth homes. Sometimes even more. If you grow up there, you learn something very early. There are two worlds living side by side. One world where money is invisible because there's so much of it, it doesn't need to be shown. And another world where every dollar matters. Where people notice things like what shoes you wear, what lunch you bring, what toys you had growing up. Kids don't say it directly, but they understand it better than adults think. If you're drawn to stories like this, real, raw, and uncovering what's hidden, make sure you subscribe, drop a comment, and like this video. It helps more people see the truth behind stories like this. They used to joke about it in school. Two types of girls. The ones who had American Girl dolls, and the ones who had Barbies. It sounded like a harmless joke, but it wasn't. Because one of those dolls cost over $100, and the other could be found for less than $10. One meant you came from comfort. The other meant you made do with what you had. And when you're a kid, those differences don't just sit quietly in the background. They shape how you see yourself. Nenah grew up on the side that had to make do. Her school wasn't near the ocean. It didn't have shiny facilities or wealthy parents funding everything. Most of the students relied on discounted or free lunches. Teachers tried their best, but everyone knew resources were limited. It wasn't a place where people talked about summer trips to Europe or weekend yacht parties. It was a place where people talked about getting by. Nenah wasn't bitter about it. She understood it. And more importantly, she had a plan. She kept her head down. Avoid drama. Focus on school. Get a part-time job. Save money. Graduate. Go to college. Build something better. Maybe one day, live close enough to the water to feel like she made it. Not next to billionaires. She didn't need that. Just close enough to breathe a little easier. It was a simple plan. A good plan. The kind of plan adults tell you will work if you just stay disciplined. But sometimes life doesn't wait for your plan to unfold. Sometimes it cuts across it without warning. The day everything shifted didn't feel special at first. It felt like any other school day. Until it wasn't. Nenah sat in the principal's office, her shoulders tight, her hands clenched together. Her hair was messy, her face flushed, her eyes red from crying. Across from her sat another girl, looking just as shaken. The air in the room was heavy, thick with tension. The principal wasn't trying to hide his anger. "What were you thinking?" he shouted, his voice bouncing off the walls. "We have rules. No fighting. None." But this wasn't something that started that day. It had been building for weeks. Rumors passed between students. Whispered insults. Side comments. Little things that didn't seem big on their own, but together created something explosive. It all centered around a boy. Attention. Jealousy. Pride. The kind of conflict that feels massive when you're that age. They ran into each other in the hallway. Words were exchanged. Then louder words. Then pushing. Then fists. Someone shouted, "Catfight," and suddenly it wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a spectacle. A crowd gathered. Phones out. People cheering like it was entertainment. By the time it was broken up, one girl had a bloody nose. Teachers rushed in. Both girls were dragged to the office. Parents were called. It looked like just another messy high school incident. Until the search. The principal went through their bags, one by one. When he opened Nenah's wallet, he paused. Inside was $300. Clean bills. Not folded. Not worn. Crisp 20s. The room went silent. This wasn't normal. Not in that school. Not for someone her age. "Where did you get this?" the principal asked, his tone shifting from anger to suspicion. Nenah didn't answer. She kept her eyes down, staring at the floor like it might open up and swallow her whole. Her parents arrived not long after. Confused. Concerned. Repeating the same question in softer tones, hoping she would respond. "It's okay. Just tell us. You're not in trouble. Where did the money come from?" At first, nothing. Just silence and quiet crying. Then it came out. Not slowly, not carefully, but all at once. Like something that had been trapped finally forcing its way out. She talked about a man. An older man. About going to a house. About being told it was just a massage. About how strange it felt the moment she got there. About how he was naked. About how he kept asking her to take off her clothes. About how she said no. About how he didn't really accept that no. The words tumbled over each other. Fear, confusion, embarrassment all mixed together. Everyone in the room was trying to process it. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was something else entirely. And then came the question that made everything stop. Who was he? Nenah looked up slightly, her voice barely steady. Jeffrey Epstein. That name didn't belong to a normal person. It belonged to someone who lived in a completely different world. A man with homes in multiple countries. A man who moved in circles most people would never even see. Presidents. Royalty. Billionaires. People whose names filled headlines for power, not scandal. At least, not yet. His life looked like something out of a movie. A massive townhouse in New York, filled with strange and expensive art. Rooms that felt more like displays than living spaces. Everything curated, everything intentional. There was something about it that made people uneasy, even if they couldn't explain why. He was known for being disciplined. Controlled. Precise. He woke up at the same time every day. Ate carefully. Walked exact distances. Measured everything. People said he was brilliant. That he understood things others didn't. That he could talk about science, finance, philosophy all in one conversation. But there was always something missing in those descriptions. No one could clearly explain what he actually did for a living. He just had money. Endless amounts of it. And influence that seemed to stretch further than it should. That influence created a kind of shield. A quiet protection. The kind that doesn't need to be announced. It just exists. In places like Palm Beach, people understood something without saying it out loud. The more money you had, the less the rules applied to you. And Epstein didn't just have money. He had power. Years later, that same man would be sitting in a prison cell in New York. A place known for being harsh, broken, almost forgotten. The kind of place where conditions were so bad they became jokes in courtrooms. Rats. Broken plumbing. Darkness. Neglect. On a quiet morning, guards approached his cell. He didn't respond. They went inside. And just like that, Jeffrey Epstein was dead. The official explanation was simple. Suicide. But nothing about it felt simple. People started asking questions almost immediately. How does someone that powerful end up unprotected? Why were protocols not followed? Why did everything seem to fail at the same time? Some believed he took his own life. Others believed he was silenced. That there were people who didn't want him to speak. That there were secrets too dangerous to come out. Because Epstein wasn't just a man with money. He was a man connected to other powerful people. People with reputations, careers, influence. People who had everything to lose if certain things became public. And at the center of it all were stories like Nenah's. Stories that didn't start with headlines. Stories that started with small decisions. A ride in a car. A promise of easy money. A belief that you could walk away if something felt wrong. But once you stepped into that world, walking away wasn't always simple. For many of the girls, it started the same way. Someone they knew introduced them. A friend. A coworker. Someone they trusted. They were told it was just a massage. Quick money. Easy. Harmless. $200 for less than an hour. When you're young, that sounds like an opportunity. What they weren't told was what would actually happen behind closed doors. What they weren't prepared for was the pressure. The manipulation. The way "no" slowly stopped meaning anything. Some tried to set boundaries. Some tried to convince themselves they were in control. But the situation was never equal. It couldn't be. He was older. Wealthy. Experienced. And they were young, uncertain, trying to navigate something they didn't fully understand. And he knew that. That's what made it so dangerous. It wasn't random. It wasn't careless. It was calculated. He knew who to target. He knew how to approach them. He knew what to promise. Money. Opportunities. A future. College. Travel. A better life. And when someone believes their future is right in front of them, they're willing to tolerate things they normally wouldn't. That's how it worked. Step by step. Slowly. Until they were in too deep. And by the time the truth started to surface, it wasn't just one story anymore. It was many. Each one different in detail, but the same at its core. And the deeper people looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about one man. It was about a system that allowed him to operate for years. A system where money created silence. Where power created protection. Where victims were questioned more than the person accused. And where justice felt out of reach. If this story opened your eyes even a little, take a second to subscribe, leave a comment with your thoughts, and like this video. Your engagement helps bring stories like this to light.